Hey everybody, this is Steven from PopCultureMaven.com. We're back with this week's new comic book reviews. It's a big week, folks. It is a very big week. So we're gonna get to it. There's a lot of DC. There's a ton of DC this week. So we're gonna go through those and number of independents. Marvel actually has a pretty light week, but there's still some stuff. So let's get going. First off, we have Aquaman, Andromeda #1, written by Ram V with artwork by Christian Ward. So I think I think Aquaman as a character has always struggled a lot over the years. Mostly because I think he's a very interesting character, but I think a lot of writers struggle to get a handle on him. There have been some good runs. There have been not so good runs, but I will say Ram V has really nailed it. He's really becoming quite one of my favorite writers right now. He's done a number of independent books. One of my favorites, the Layla Starr, really wonderful book. You should pick that up. There's a trade of that. And currently he's writing Swamp Thing for DC. So I was really intrigued with what he would bring to Aquaman, and I have to say that I'm really, really pleased. The interesting thing is that in a lot of ways he's not actually in this first issue a lot, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because what he's doing is he's setting things up. So what it is there's this submarine with various each person. There's like a scientist, a navigator, and all different things that have been picked, but they don't know quite why they're going. They're going to basically the space graveyard of the ocean. It's a part of the ocean that's really deep. It isn't surrounded by any land masses or anything. So what they do is when they crash a satellite, or when a satellite they need to take down, they crash it in this place. Well, there is a mysterious object that is down there, and they're sent there to discover it, and then they find out that that their mission is kind of covert and that they're really not supposed to be there. So then Aquaman is in the story, but later on he shows up, and excuse me, and that's kind of where this first issue sets up. But it's really good, because I think what he also does is kind of give Arthur a bit of a little backstory of how, and I think this is really what I loved about this book is Ram really gets the two sides of Aquaman. Basically he's half human and half Atlantean. So I think what he's done really well here is he's understood that there's kind of a yin and yang to that. He wants to, be an Atlantean, but he also has a fondness for living on land. So I think, that's a really interesting thing. And I think that's what really I loved about this story. So once again, this first issue is a setup, but it is setting up with exposition, but it didn't feel really heavy exposition. I really enjoyed that. And then not only is the story great, but then you have Ward's artwork that just is mind-boggling beautiful. I mean, this is a really gorgeous book. His artwork is just absolutely stunning in this book. I mean, and it really just pops in so many different ways. And I think what really, how he gets, the really big thing is his use of color, and how it really brings a lot of the visuals of the story just really just beautifully. It is a wonderful book. I cannot recommend this book enough. It just really, it knocked my socks off, and that's a really tough ticket to buy today, especially with Aquaman. And Ram has just nailed it. So this is really one of the big must-buy books of the week. Not only is it a just brilliant story, but the artwork's absolutely stunningly gorgeous, and definitely well worth buying this week. That's a must-buy this week. Next up, we have Afterschool #1, written by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, with artwork by Greg Hinkle. So what's interesting, I've been a really big fan of Silver Coin, and what Silver Coin is, it's an anthology where every issue is going to be different. So is Afterschool. Unfortunately, I don't know why they called it this, because it's kind of a horrible name in some respects for an anthology. I mean, especially for a horror anthology, it kind of doesn't make any sense. So don't be thrown by the title. Like, it's not some like after school special. It's not kids, oh hey, let's go swimming in. Like, no, it's nothing like that. And even the cover is a bit odd for really the horror story, and that's what's interesting. So that being out of the way, I actually really enjoyed it. So the good thing is these are one and done stories. So, and I believe it's going to be a different creative team each issue, but that I'm not sure of. But so what this is, it's about this girl who kind of always feels out of place and it never quite, does the right thing. Kind of not so much an outcast, but just doesn't is just not comfortable with in herself and just doesn't always, she always feels like she doesn't do the right thing. So her parents get her this dog, and this dog is like it really inspires her and just really lifts her up. And then you find out that the dog is like an alien, or an alien being has taken control of the dog. And so it's trying to get back home, a la like say E.T. And what you find out is that this alien needs body parts, or parts of bodies, whether it's human or animal, to build a machine to go back home. And that's a basic premise, and I don't want to give it away, but I will say that the ending is like, oh crap. It's one of those, it has a really good twist ending right at the end. I wouldn't say it's not as deep horror as say Silver Coin is an example, because that's another anthology, but it's more of a more subtle horror title, but it definitely was really good. The story, like I said, was really interesting. I did like Hinkle's artwork. It's really a nice looking book, and I think there is some blood, but I wouldn't say it's a bloodbath. So it's more of a more subtle horror comic, which is quite interesting. So I enjoyed it. It'll be interesting to see what the next issue story is going to be. So we'll kind of see where that goes. Next up, we have DC Pride 2022 #1. So bear with me. This is going to be a long list. So we have the first story is a Superman John Kent story written by Devin Grayson with artwork by Nick Robles. Then we have Confessions with Nubia, that's written by Stephanie Williams and Megan Hedrick. Then we have Think of Me, written by Rose Stein and Ted Brandt, with artwork by Frank Kevikovich. Up at the Bay, written by Jaja Axelrod, with artist Lynn Yoshi. World Kept Just For Me, written by Alyssa Wong, with artwork by W. Scott Forbes. Gumshoe and Green, written by Tinny Howard, with artwork by Evan Cagle. Public Display of Electromagnetism, written by Greg Lockhart, with Julio Maniconi as the artist. Bat in the Cradle, written by Stephanie Phillips, with artwork by Samantha Dodge. Special Delivery, written and drawn by Travis G. Moore. The Hunt, written by Danny Fernandez, with artwork by Zoe Thorogood. Are You Ready for This? Written by Danny Lauren Ivan Cohen, with Brittany Williams as the artist. And then the final story is Finding Batman, written by Kevin Conroy, with artwork by Jay Bone. So this is a follow-up to last year's Pride special. And first of all, I think last year's was really good. I really enjoyed it. But this year's was really, really just, every story was really good. And I think what it was, I think last year's was, I don't want to say it was put together in a hurry, but I think this one, because they did last year's and that was successful, they had more time to develop stories and get creators. And so I think that really benefited. But I also think that the stories were really I think that a lot of the characters, in the case of like the first story, John Kent has really, he's really grown into into himself, and I think that's what's interesting. So this one has the first story has Robin and John Kent, which is really, really good. I really enjoyed that. The Nubia story was quite interesting because it kind of has a flashback to the 80s, where she had a sword, and she tells the story of how it's broken. What was really great was the artwork, mimic the style and the feel of the 90s comics, and that was actually kind of a good treat. Then we had the Green Arrow, which is not the Oliver Queen. That one was a really good story. I really enjoyed that. The Batgirl one was really interesting. I did like that one. That one was really good. I really did enjoy that. The Aqua Lad or Aquaman, I think it's Aqua Lad. That one was a really interesting story because he tells how he grew because his mom was Atlantean, and they basically grew up in the desert where there was no water because she wanted to be as far away from the water as possible. I think one of the most interesting stories, and I think it was because it was visual, the Gumshoe and Green was the Far Sector Green Lantern, which was really I think she's a really interesting character. But Tinny Howard wrote a really great story, but it was the Ivan Kagel's artwork that just really, because it's basically a noir story that's black and white, and then there's green. So it really was a wonderful story. I really, really enjoyed that. The public display of electromagnetism is the Ray story, which was actually a lot of fun. What was it? The Bats in the Cradle was a lot of fun because that actually is Batwoman. That was really a good story. I like that. The Travis Moore, the special delivery with Robin was really enjoyable because it's kind of a superhero, but then you find out that he's got a present for his boyfriend, and the villains they don't know what they're trying to say. Oh, well, it's like a Batman gadget. We must steal this. And it really was a really wonderful story and really charming. The Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy, The Hunt, was really a good story, but what really knocked my socks off on that one was Thorogood's artwork. It really was a wonderful story, and I really enjoyed that one. The Flash was really good. It kind of had the Justice Society vibe to it, but what really stands out was the final story, Finding Batman, written by Kevin Conroy, who does the voice of Batman, the animated series. He also did the video games, and it is his life story of how growing up as a gay man in Hollywood as an actor was really difficult, and how he struggled with himself, and how literally in some ways Batman saved his career and his life in some respects. And it's really just a very touching story because it's autobiographical, but it just, I think what makes it is not only is it a great story, it's obviously very heartfelt, but it's very touching. And I think it's touching because I think even if you're not LGBTQ, even if you're straight, I think what really is important about this story is finding yourself and how, things will get better. And it really is wonderful. And J Bone's artwork is just absolutely stunning. I really just, that story just really touched me, and it was really just very heartfelt and really emotional, but in a really good way. I know it was probably very difficult for Conroy to write that, but I'm glad that he did, because I really think it's a story that everyone really needs to read. I really enjoyed this year's this book. It really is wonderful, and it really shows that there's a lot of great LGBTQ talent out there, and I really recommend it. Even if you're just an ally, definitely buy this. Definitely, I think this book was really just wonderful this year. Great stories, great art. Definitely pick it up. Next up, we have The Ward #1, written by Kevin Scott with artwork by Andres Ponce. So what this is it starts off where a woman's coming back to her apartment, and somebody has been injured, and what it is you find out that she's a paramedic, but she's a paramedic for kind of the mystical world. So what it is this person is actually is a human, but has been injured by a mythical creature, and so she understands the wound, and so when they go sort of, they're heading to the hospital, and it's kind of like the Harry Potter thing where they go through like they go through a wall, and they're in this other world dimension type thing where there's a hospital for these kind of injuries, and that's the basic premise. I wouldn't say, that I was necessarily blown away. I liked a lot of the story. I think there was some interesting elements here. It didn't necessarily blow me away, but I thought it was interesting, and it might be worth checking out the second issue. Scott's script is good. It's solid and everything. It does all the things it needs to. It sets up, explains things. And Ponce's artwork's nice and everything. I just think that it didn't necessarily blow me away, but it wasn't necessarily, bad or anything. I just thought it was okay. It had some good ideas. I think it's kind of worth checking out, but I wouldn't say I'm totally sold. I like the premise. We'll see where it goes in the second issue. Next up, we have Dark Crisis #1, written by Joshua Williamson, with artwork by Daniel Sampre. So this is DC's big summer fiesta blowout, and like I've said a million times before, I'm not really a big event crossover fiesta person. I will say Dark Crisis is mild. I think it's better than average of these event comics. So this leads up from Justice League 75, where the Justice League are dead. Yeah, right. And so what it is the other heroes have to kind of step up, and then John Kent basically puts together a new Justice League because basically the villains are like, hey, it's a free-for-all because the Justice League are dead, so all the rest of the superheroes that are still alive are kind of taking up the slack. So that's kind of the basic story that is set up here. And then we also have Pharaoh, who is, so basically this is kind of a semi-sequel, or it's a sequel to Crisis on Infinite Earths. And so so that's really, the setup here. So once again, I wouldn't say that I was blown away. I thought it was actually pretty solid, which for me is a big win for any sort of big event crossover. Where it's actually something I will read and kind of see where it goes. Now, whether I probably will not read all the, because there's a bunch of spin-offs and everything. I think, the question comes down to, you'll probably be able to read most of the main story and not really have to deal with a lot of the side stuff, because last week's Road to Dark Crisis was sadly just terrible. So hopefully that'll continue to be the case. Not that they're terrible, that you could just read this main story. Once again, I think Williamson did a good job with the script and everything. He does a nice job setting everything up. Sampre's art's really nice. It's a good looking book. So like I said, I wouldn't say, I think it's better than average for the events of comics of lately. So I think it's pretty much worth checking out, especially if you're a DC fan. It does have pretty much every other superhero in it. So there is the thing where you get to see a bunch of people that you normally don't get to see. So there is that. And the new Justice League apparently needed 2 Blue Beetles, which is kind of sadly hilarious. Uh, so next up, we have Astronaut Down, #1, written by James Patrick, with artwork by Rubin. So what this is so the world has basically, it's almost like if the polar ice caps and most everything's underwater, but the water itself is like kind of mutated, and it's kind of like so they've walled the cities off, they put them in like domes and stuff. And if the water gets in, it's just going to kill everybody. So what it is they're these astronauts are trying to, it's not like they send them in a rocket. It's almost like they transport them. That's kind of the basic feel I've got for that. And what it is they're trying to get them to find a new place to live. It's like a new Earth, sort of. That's the basic premise. So it's kind of an interesting setup. So really the first issue kind of sets up all, which astronauts they're going to pick, blah, blah, blah. And then you find out, the Earth is kind of screwed, and this is bad. They've got to try to figure out that, to find a new home. So that's a basic premise. And I don't really want to give away the ending. I think it has a neat twist to the ending. The thing is that this first issue kind of sets everything up, and then you have that twist in the last page. So I think it was interesting. In a lot of ways, it's kind of a story you've read before. The Earth's a screw. We're going to try to find a new Earth. I think Patrick put enough twist on it that it's like has some promise to it. And I think it's kind of worth checking out. Not a huge recommendation, but I think it's worth checking out because there's some interesting ideas there. Rubin's artwork's actually, it's a really nice looking book. And the artwork I actually really enjoyed, and I think it really helped move the story along, and that's always a plus. So I think it's a minor recommendation this week. Next up, we have Jane Foster, The Mighty Thor, #1, written by Torrin Gronbeck, with artwork by Michael Dowling. So, hey, guess what? There's a Thor movie come out this summer, and Jane Foster is going to be Thor. Who knew that they would do a comic? Usually they're not with the program on getting the comic or comic tie-ins. But amazingly, Marvel's kind of a bit ahead of the game, where this first issue is actually out before the movie. The only problem is it was kind of like an okay story. It wasn't something that really blew me away. But really part of the problem was that Gronbeck, there's different things going on. The problem is that it's not very well stitched together. There's a lot of times where it just jumps to another part of a story. It starts off that there's something going on in this park, and the Avengers are there to try to stop it, blah, blah, blah. And then it jumps to this diner with these two women characters. They're on a date, and it's just like, who are these people and what the hell's going on? And then it jumps to Jane Foster, but you don't know it's Jane Foster until it says, oh, it's Jane Foster. So the story, like, it's not that it's bad, but this is really disjointed because it keeps jumping around. And the problem with that is if you don't explain who it is, like who the two women at the diner are, I'm just like, hey, these two women at the diner, what the hell's going on? What does this have to do with the main story? That's a big flaw in the story. So it really just kind of fell apart for me. Not that it was bad, but when you have a disjointed story, by the time I got to the end, I just didn't care anymore, because I mean, you've set up a real mess, and all those, the different stories are not bad, but it's so disjointed. It's like, well, is the rest of the series going to be like that? I don't know, but you didn't sell it in the first issue, and that's definitely not conducive to reading more as far as I'm concerned. I will say Dowling's artwork's decent, does a good job. There's a few stiff moments, but overall it's a decent looking book. But I really can't recommend it because the story is just so disjointed, and it's kind of a shame because I think there were some good ideas there. It failed miserably. Next up we have Orcs the Curse, written and drawn by Christine Larsen. So I was a really big fan of the first miniseries Orcs, and I'm one thing I'm glad is one that it did well, that she can do a new story. But I like the idea that if you do it as a miniseries, see if it works, then do another miniseries. If that one works, do another one. And I think instead of trying to, get a book out on a monthly schedule, having, time away and then come back, can really do good. Now, I don't think you necessarily have to read the first story, because the orcs are like, oh, look, it's orcs. Okay, and they don't really refer that much. She doesn't refer that much to the miniseries. This just was like a different story. So I think it is pretty. I found that, since it's been a while since that first miniseries, so I just picked this up kind of blind in a way, not remembering a lot from that first miniseries. So that is a big plus, and that's really good. I really have to give it to LARSEN. That's a really good feat, because it allows, like, when this comes out, like as a trade or whatever, you just read that and then, oh, hey, there's the first one, and they're related, but not like you have to read them together. And that's a really big plus. Plus, now, sadly, there's no squirrels in this first issue. Hopefully, maybe squirrels will come back, because that was a really fun part. But there is a giant dance-off party in the beginning. It's really neat. So there's a dark wizard involved, and it's really a fun story. I really enjoyed the first one, and I really love the second one. LARSEN, just the stories are a lot of fun. I love how she captures, like, she does comedy, it has seriousness, it has magic, it has fighting. It's a lot of fun, and I think that's what makes it so charming, is that it's just fun. And her story is wonderful, and her artwork is just really just perfect. I love the facial expressions she does. It's a really wonderful book. I really recommend it, and if you pick up this and like it, I know there's a trade of the first miniseries. Definitely pick that up. It's really, really good. Definitely check it out, and it's good all ages book. That's a big plus too. I think it's kids are gonna like it, and it's great for anybody of any age. Next up, we have Poison Ivy #1, written by G. Willow Wilson, with artwork by Marco Takara. So I believe that a lot of this comes out of recent events in the Batman books of what has been going on with Poison Ivy. Now, I have not been reading those, so I went into this cold, and I do think that it definitely stands on its own. It's definitely, I mean, there might be some elements of why Poison Ivy is acting the way she is that I'm not familiar with, but other than that, it's pretty straightforward that Ivy's really basically upset at the human race, and she is. Once again, I don't think she's really a villain. I think she's one of those, more gray area characters where she's not really good, she's not really evil, but she's upset with the destruction of plant life and plants, and she is on a mission to fix this, and that's the basic setup here, and I really, really enjoyed this first issue. It was really wonderful. I'm a really big fan of G. Willow Wilson's. She's a wonderful writer. Obviously, she's best known for writing Ms. Marvel, which was absolutely just brilliant. And she brings her just wonderful writing to this book, and it's really good. It really is a good first issue. It sets up everything really well. And then on top of that, not only is it a good story, but then you have Takara's artwork, which really is just gorgeous. It's a great looking book, and it really, really, I really enjoyed it. It's really definitely worth checking out. I'm really excited to see where Wilson and Takara take this story, because this first issue just really popped quite well for a first issue, and it really sets up, like, I'm intrigued to see where this is going. Next up, we have Where Starships Go to Die, #1, written by Mark Sable, with artwork by Alberto Lacate. So once again, we have the world, the Earth is screwed. We need astronauts. So the irony is, it's really ironic that this came out is the same week of Aquaman, because it has a very similar story in the sense of the world's screwed up, so we're going to try to find a new Earth. But we find out that there's a once again, a spacecraft. There's a asteroid or a spacecraft, which believed to be alien, crashes, and they go find it. But what Sable does with this story is he infuses it with Jules Verne. So there's that, the world's coming to an end, we're screwed, and then there's the Jules Verne thing. So and then you find this, and the point of that is that Jules Verne was actually, he didn't write science fiction stories. He wrote, it was like his diary. This stuff really happened. So that's that. And so they find the capsule that was shot to the moon, and when they open it up, they find that there's a body in there, and that body has some sort of alien being. So that's kind of that's the basic setup for the story. And so it was interesting. I think we have two astronaut books in the same week, and they both like, hey, the Earth is screwed. I did think that this one was a little more interesting than Astronaut Down. That's not a knock against Astronauts Down. I think this one just has some more interesting twist. It felt like a little more fresh. Sable script kind of had more, especially I think the Jules Verne thing is a really big plus. So I think that's an interesting part of the story. The artwork by Lochetti is actually really nice. It's a decent looking book. I think this one is a little more worth checking out. I thought it had a better premise and had some better story elements. So not a huge recommendation, but I think if you're looking for something kind of different and science fiction-y, definitely check it out. Next up, we have Multiversity Teen Justice #1, written by Ivan Cohen and Danny Lohr, with artwork by Marco Fala. So this is this is a team that was created during Grant Morrison's Multiversity books that he did. And so what it is, it's the Teen Titans, but think of all the Teen Titans but switch gender. So like Robin's a woman, Raven's a boy, not all entirely switched, but that they're all kind of different. They're the same but different. That's kind of one way to really say it. So basically, it's a Teen Titans story, but told in a different way. They like live on a different Earth. So, and the villain is, instead of brother blood, it's sister blood. So it's kind of that. Once again, the gender bender thing. So that's the basic premise here. I think it's a Teen Titans story. That's really the best way to kind of go into this. And it's interesting. Like I said, it didn't necessarily blow me away, but I liked the premise of it. There's a nice reveal at the end that kind of like, oh, that's not what I expected. And so the other plus is that it actually also reprints the first appearance of them in from DC's Very Merry Multiverse that most people probably didn't read. It was one of those $10 books that was kind of but it does reprint that story of their first appearance outside the multiverse, out of the Multiversity Grant Morrison stories. Once again, I think it was nice. It was decent. I think the story was interesting. It didn't necessarily blow my socks off, but it did what it did, not super well, but it did it decently enough. I think the story was neat. Falala's artwork is actually nice. It's a decent book. It just didn't blow me away, but it's fun superhero stuff, and I don't think they tried to be more than what it was. So on that level, it works pretty well for what it is. But it's not going to really knock your socks off by any stretch of the imagination. Next up, we have Twig #2, written by Scotty Young with artwork by Kyle Stratham. So I really, really like the first issue. And so now we have Twig has went to basically the professor wizard, and he's dead. So he has this gem, and so he tries to figure out so there's this machine, he puts it in there, and so basically he breaks the gem. That's what he does. He kind of screws up what he's supposed to do, because he's just supposed to take it there. So now he has to go on a journey to basically see if the crystal can be repaired. And so that's really where the story's going. So he ends up going to the Darklands to find this person that will hopefully help him figure it out. And that's kind of where we're going. So he has to go on a journey. That's the basic structure of this story. It's just really fun. It's a light, good, enjoyable book. It's a great all ages book. The really big win here is Stratham's artwork. This book is just absolutely just gorgeous, and it's just a fun story. I think sometimes that's what's nice about a book is it's fun, it's nice, I wouldn't say that it's not deep. It's just not, it's just not dark and depressing. It's just a sweet story. It's a great all ages book, and with a really good story, with really fantastic art. It's a big win all around. It's definitely well worth checking out. I really love this book, and I really can't wait to see how his journey goes. Next up, we have Flashpoint Beyond, number 2, written by Jeff Johns, Tim Sheridan, and Jeremy Adams, with artwork by Zemiko and Mikkel Janin. So I think this is a little bit late. I think it's been a little bit more of a month. I know a Jeff Johns book that's late. That never happens. So anyway, so we have basically not Bruce Wayne, but his father is Batman. So what it is this is a different timeline. It's a different Flashpoint timeline. And so the first issue, he tried to get Barry Allen, who wasn't the Flash, but tried to get him he put him on top of the building so he could get struck by lightning and make him the Flash. Well, that didn't work out. So now everything's all screwed up, and he's kind of stuck in trying now. He's trying to fix everything. So that is still what's going on here, and so you have all these characters that are different, slightly different than their characters. Instead of Bruce Wayne, it's his father, and so Harvey Dent, it's his wife, and so on and so forth. I think it's interesting. I did, like I said, it's been a while since the first issue came out, but it does. I did finally remember once I started reading. I'm like, oh yeah, that happened. I think it's interesting. I mean, it's just, we're kind of going back to the well again. It's just another Flashpoint story. I don't think it's bad. I think it's decent. It's, I think it's going to be one of those where it might be better to just wait and just read it all in one shot, especially if it's going to run late. But otherwise, I will say, Zemiko's artwork's really good. Now, Mikkel Janin only does the last 2 pages, and I won't say why. I think there's a reason for that. I know there's a reason for that, but Zemiko's artwork is actually really nice. It's a good looking book. The story's decent. It's basically a Flashpoint story. It's kind of a what if type story, which is what the Flashpoint kind of is. So it is what it is. And like I said, it's decent. It's not the greatest thing I've ever read, but it was entertaining for what it was. Next up, we have The Amazing Spider-Man number 3, written by Zeb Wells, with pencils by John Romita Jr. and inks by Scott Hanna. I really have to give it to Zeb Wells. I'm not a huge Spider-Man current reader. I love Spider-Man as a character, but for the most part, most of the regular books, I just don't do it for me. But I really have to give Zeb Wells. He's really doing a really good story here. I'm really enjoying it. I think partially because he's using characters that you don't really see often, and also putting Peter in kind of a different way. I mean, he's Spider-Man, but he's kind of like, because this is 6 months, he's been gone for like 6 months, and things are different, and I like that. It's a different Spider-Man. It's a different Peter. It's like different villains, and I think that's what I'm really enjoying about this, is that he's really taking in places that just like, you know, he's not trying, first of all, he's not trying to reinvent the wheel. He's not trying to like, oh, we need to do this. No, he's just telling a good Spider-Man story. And I think the interesting thing is that Spider-Man's basically been captured and is getting the crap kicked out of him. I mean, he's getting really effed up this issue, and you're just like, whoa. I mean, that's pretty ballsy. And also we get to learn about, you know, the big boss's like origin of why he became really, he's always been like that, but how he came to be. And I think that was a really interesting part of the story. Once again, I have to, you know, I'm not the biggest John Romita Jr. fan, but his artwork's actually pretty decent. Hannah's doing a really nice job of inking him, but he has kind of a cleaner style now. He doesn't have that really scratchy look anymore, which I never liked. So I'm enjoying it. I think if you're looking for a Spider-Man book and once again, without like this huge like continuity monster or grill on your back, this is definitely something worth picking up. I mean, I'm 3 issues in, I'm still enjoying it, so I think it's worth checking out. Next up, we have Batman Killing Time, written by Tom King and David Marquez. So we still have the mystery thing that Riddler and Catwoman have stolen. We have the bounty hunter going after Batman. That's still going on. And so there's a lot of spinning plates here. I do enjoy the story, but as we're at the 4th issue, I will say that if you have not been reading this, wait till it's all collected, because there's a lot of time jumps, which is not bad in the sense of the overall story. But the problem is there's a lot of time jumps when you're reading it monthly. It's kind of hard to keep track of more so some of the different story elements. Not necessarily the present, but I think the more past ones, you struggle a little bit reading it on a monthly basis. Like I said, I do like this story. I think it's really interesting because it's more of if there's a lot going on that you normally don't see. I mean, Batman is kind of getting his butt kicked. Riddler's very different. I mean, it's just very interesting, and I like how how King is really taking a different approach to like the characters in this story. I do enjoy it. But like I said, I think it's not good as a monthly book. I think it's really going to be one of those stories that's really you're just going to sit down and read in one shot. And I think it's going to work a lot better on that. I will say I love David Marquez's artwork. It's a really gorgeous looking book. But like I said, I think at this point, I think it's just wait for the trade if you have not picked it up, because it's really good. I think it's not good as a monthly, and sometimes that happens. So next up we have Thor 26, which is part 4 of the Banner War, written by Donny Cates and with artwork by Martin Cuculo. So the last issue, Thor is kind of turned into the Hulk. So we have that going. That's just he's the Hulk and Thor, so that's not a good combination if you're in front of him, because he's going to kick your ass. So Tony Stark's not doing well with that. But we do have so first of all, the new Hulk Thor breaks the Rainbow Bridge. Who knew that could happen? Odin's like, oh my god. And then so we finally so then well, I really don't want to spoil the ending, but let's always say we have the yin to the yang. And that's what it is. Once again, I mean, in a lot of respects, this is a giant fight between Thor and Hulk. I think it's fun for what it is. It's not particularly like mind-numbingly brilliant. I think it's more like a giant battle that's been going on for 5 issues or 5 parts, and then we'll have the next part is the final part. It's been a fun ride. I think the thing is, I don't know that this is going to get, if people who haven't been reading Thor or Hulk, I don't know this is going to compel you to read either one, because this is so different, and it's really just Thor versus Hulk for beating the snot out of each other, mostly for like 5 issues. It's one of those things. it is what it is. I don't think it's I'm enjoying it for what it is, but other than that, it's very very surface. There's nothing really deep here going on, and I don't think the next issue is really going to change that. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Kokulo's artwork's really nice. It continues to be a really nice looking book. It is what it is. It's just a giant battle book. And finally, we have Dark Knights of Steel #7, written by Tom Taylor, with artwork by Nathan Gooden this issue. I actually, Yarsky's artwork is really wonderful, but they've had some really great guest artists on this book. And Nathan Gooden's a really, he's done some work, but I have to say the artwork in this particular book is absolutely stunning. I mean, I really like his work that he's done. He's done a couple Vault comics that look really nice, but this looks really good. And so this issue, Bruce Wayne finally learns that he is actually the bastard son of the elves, but he does have their powers. And so, of course, last issue he got attacked with kryptonite, and of course it was poisoning him. So now this is the first time we've actually seen the Teen Titans show up in this universe. So they come, and so he's staying with Martha and Jonathan Kent. And so that's really what happens this issue. I really have to say, I really love this book because it's Tom Taylor doing an Elseworld story. And it's fun because all these characters, they're still the same characters in a lot of ways, but he's just giving them, like, you know, it's like a different angle to them, you know, like having Bruce Wayne as Superman basically. And that Ra's al Ghul is kind of like, he's almost like the Phantom Stranger, the Spectre in a way, because he's got some deal going on. We don't know what's going on with him. He's got an agenda. You know, is he playing the field? Is he, you know, what's he got going on? You've got the Demon, and then you've got the Teen Titans. It's just a really fun book, and it's just taking these twists and turns that is just really, really wonderful. I really love this book, and I really can't wait to see where Taylor takes it. And once again, Gooden's artwork's really, really nice. It's a really good looking book. And it's well worth checking out. But I think at this point, just wait for the trade when it's all collected. It's a really fun story. That's going to do it this week. It's been a long one. Sorry, a ton of books. There's even a few that I forgot to grab this week. It was just such a big week and so chaotic. And so that's going to do it. But as always, our public service announcement, I get all my comics at Pulp Fiction Comics in Long Beach, California. It's a great store run by Ryan and his team, Annie and Eduardo and Wendy and Derek. Can't forget Derek. Derek does all the video work for the show. They do an unboxing show for new titles on Tuesday. It's a really great comic store. They offer discounts on new comics with their pull service. Offer discounts on trades and graphic novels. It's a great store. Check out their Facebook group page, just Pulp Fiction Comics Long Beach. If you live in the LA area, Culver City, there is Pulp Fiction Culver City. Same name, run by Chris and her team, separate stores. But they also offer the same discounts, really good service. They're both really good stores. Of course, I live down here in Long Beach, so of course I go to Pulp Fiction Comics. And Ryan's a great guy. Ryan runs he really is a wonderful. It's a wonderful comic shop. Definitely check it out if you live in the area or if you're down in the area. And as always, we end our show with "Be kind." Things are tough out there on many different levels. And just be kind. Being kind is one of the best things you can do, and just really take care of yourselves out there on many different levels. It's tough all over, and but just take care of yourselves and really support your local comic shops. They're small businesses. It's tough times all around, but as always, just be kind and take care of yourselves. That's going to do it. Sorry for the long-winded. I tried to get through them as quick as I could. So until next week, please subscribe and like our YouTube channel. Comments are always welcome. As long as they're nice. No, just and I don't mind constructive criticism, but just be nice. Once again, be kind. So take care of yourselves. We'll see you next week. This is Steven from popculturemaven.com signing out. Take care of yourselves. All right. Bye-bye.